Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another installment of the Nugget Junction. My name is Cranston, and I am your host. I am flanked by my co-host, Linda Mitheo.
Hello, guys.
Good to see you again.
Always. You're looking sharp, too.
I
I
know.
love the
the
dashiki. You're representing.
I don't know why you keep calling it a dashiki.
It's a dashiki.
Though.
Okay, isn't
dashiki?
African men's shirt a dashiki?
I think an African men's shirt is an African man's shirt.
No, how can you? It has a name for it.
Called a dashiki?
It's a dashiki. I don't know which Oyibo land you're from. You seem to be very westernized from the beginning to the end. From your name to not understanding Nigerian names from last episode, why they have African names.
Oh, yeah, I know.
What is the shiki?
To now you don't know the dashiki. We should take you back.
Maybe I should go back to Africa for a little bit. I need re-education.
Please, if I'm wrong, viewers let me know. But I believe it is known as a
dashiki. If you've watched this show, I think she's partially correct. However, for today's episode, we have a treat because my colleague here is Dr. Molapo Selepe. He is a prolific general practitioner who's been through a couple of European countries before he got to Australia. I'll give him a moment to explain that. He was self-nominated to be one of Western Australia's best GPs.
Amazing.
We actually, a few of us who knew that self-nomination, we were like 100%.
Self-nomination. I love it. Who doesn't want to put themselves on the map?
And then he's also a prolific writer. He's written several books. We are working on a 3-part series book called A New Afrikan. We are translating that into a podcast and then into an interviews program as well. And we are very happy to have you on the couch. Welcome to the
Well, thank you so much. What a beautiful welcome. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
That's me in a nutshell. Again, I'm Molapo Selepe. I'm a GP locally here in Perth. I'm originally from South Africa, born and bred in South Africa.
Amazing.
Interesting enough, I was born back in the era of apartheid when odds were stacked against us.
Wow.
But God being God
Amen.
And the universe and its generosity and benevolence. At the time when I was finishing high school, Nelson Mandela got released from prison.
Yes.
And you know what that meant?
Yes.
It meant opportunities for us as African people back in the day when we didn't have much opportunities. And, as they say, luck is when opportunity meets preparedness.
Yes.
And at that time I was prepared. I finished my high school in good marks, and I was able to go to university. And that's where my start of medicine started. And
where was this? Was in South Africa?
In South Africa.
University of?
I studied medicine at the University of Cape Town.
So you were residing in Cape Town, even though you're from, where are you from?
I am from a place called Odendaalsrus, which is a small town outside Welkom, which is somewhere midway Johannesburg and Bloemfontein. So if you're driving from Johannesburg about 2 hours south of Johannesburg, that's where I come from. I grew up right in the middle of the country. If you look at South African map, there's a donut in the middle.
Yes.
And that it's an independent country called Lesotho.
Yeah, by the way, it is an independent. It's on its own, is it?
Yeah. So that's where I come from. My ancestry
Lesotho.
From Lesotho.
You're popularly known for this blanket, right? I mean, it's pretty cold in the mountains there.
Man, we are the people.
Oh, so you're in the mountains?
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
In fact, Lesotho, it's actually the highest elevated or a country with the highest altitude in the world.
Amazing.
Higher than Nepal, and because Nepal, although they have
Himalayas,
yes,
the mountains.
The actual,
town, the population,
the whole area, the country that is highest elevated, Lesotho is.
That's fantastic. I would have never known.
So it's a very cold country. but we are also blessed with the most important resource, which is water. So most of South African water comes from those mountains in Lesotho.
Oh, amazing. Fresh, clean, crisp.
Spring
I want a
water.
taste, eh?
Exactly.
Well, welcome.
And
Very
and
welcome.
also electricity, of course. So there is hydropower.
You guys don't have the blackouts now.
No.
Let's go.
So hang on, how come you have
Eskom doesn't
electricity?
come.
How does your terrain, complement electricity?
There is hydropower. There's
Right.
hydroelectricity
Like a dam?
power station.
Oh, amazing.
There's a big highland water project in Lesotho called Katse Dam, and so that supplies South Africa with water, but also with electricity.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So
Eskom
that's us.
should come to Lesotho, guys.
It sounds
Maybe
beautiful.
they can learn something from it.
Yeah, I mean it's the story of Africa. It's like that. South Africa is struggling with power, but their neighbor, which is Lesotho, has got all the power, but there is ongoing border, which is an artificial border between the two countries. And you ask yourself, how come as Africans we cannot speak between the two countries so that we have friendly terms?
Yes, exactly.
Where both countries are benefiting from our resources.
Exactly.
So that's a nutshell of where I come from.
I think it's beautiful. I mean, first of all, he's not Nigerian. Finally, someone who's not Nigerian on the couch. Or maybe someone who's a bit closer to Cranston, Cranston being a southerner. Cranston, how do you feel about that?
I feel very safe.
I've seen this one.
I feel secure
I feel secure.
because several episodes ago we've had some very interesting people on the couch.
Very interesting. Why are they
I haven't
interesting?
been attacked or threatened, but hey, these guys can scam you whilst they're sleeping.
Yeah, you never know. He's very watchful of that.
Yeah.
But I'm very interested. I've always been very interested in the South African culture. Okay, first of all, how is it that you are considered South African if you have an independent country of your own?
Well, I was born and bred South African, but as I say, my ancestors came from Lesotho. In fact, if you look at South African history, Lesotho was South Africa, or South Africa was Lesotho. This was one country until in
I understand.
1868 thereabout.
Wow.
So before then, a large part of the middle of South Africa was actually part of Lesotho. So our languages are the same.
Interesting. Which is what language?
Sesotho.
Sesotho, not Chakazulu. Me not being from the southern, all we know is Zululand, Chaka Zulu.
Barbarians, guys.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
it's a
So
Sotho language.
It's a Sotho language. Cranston, do you understand Sotho? Seeing your southerner?
You do actually, because the Loti people
in Zambia,
in
yeah.
Zambia, we speak
The
same
dialect
language.
is fairly similar.
Yeah,
If I understood Lozi, it would
So
help.
Interesting.
Dumela, which is hello. Okay, how are you? No?
What about Stimela?
Oh,
Yeah,
go Cranston.
Stimela is yes. It's our language, but it's sort of
It's a train you
It's
have to
a-
run away.
So
It's
do
a-
you all
it's a
speak
train.
that click language?
yes, we do. When we say
Asutus, if I can
Sotus
put
we
it that
do.
way.
When I say maqheku aqoqa qwaqwa aqoqa moqoqo oqawulang.
That is a language and a half.
Oqoqwa ke ma
That's awesome.
yes, tantani nyaqemile qwaqwa.
Are you hearing, guys? Hey, like I said, I get so interested in cultures in general, but that is deep. So what are you saying out of what you've just said?
All those clicks. What
What's
was
the
that?
clicks? I guess it's a part of the language, but
I think he's trying to say, like, I'm here, I'm right here, and then I know that you're there, and I can come there where you are, because then there where you are is where I'm here, and I'm here because we're there.
okay, that sounds very.
Yeah, but it's a simple thing to say. Maqheku aqwaqwa.
Can I try? Please teach me. Only because I do have my girl who hooks me up with my hair.
Yeah.
She is from Zimb/South Africa. And she does try to teach me the Zulu language with the clicking. So teach me something. Let me try something.
Yeah. Say that. Maqheku aqwaqwa aqoqa
Give me
moqoqo.
one at a time.
Okay. Maqheku aqwaqwa. Yeah.
Maqheku
Well
aqwaqwa.
done.
Oh my God. Maqheku aqwaqwa.
Yes.
I'm trying.
Maqheku aqwaqwa.
Maqheku
Clancy, can you say
Oh,
that?
I'm just gonna sit here like a fly on the wall.
No,
I'll
man,
let you
say
guys do your Zulu
Maqheku.
lessons,
Maqheku
Aqwaqwa.
aqwaqwa.
and then
Which means the old people of Qwaqwa. Qwaqwa is a
Is that region or
big
something?
town, in South Africa, next to at the border with Lesotho. So the old people of Qwaqwa, when you say Baqoqa, you see they are having a conversation.
Maqwaqwa.
Maqheku aqwaqwa aqoqa moqoqo. They are having a conversation. Oqabolang, which is funny.
Oqabolana. Amazing. I love that.
so could you say that again in a whole statement?
Maqheku aqwaqwa aqoqa moqoqo oqabolang.
Is that difficult? Or is that something you're obviously raised with from the get-go? Did you find that difficult learning that? Okay,
No,
look, we're not trying to be like ignorant or anything. You know, we do muck around a bit in this podcast. But yeah, in all respect, that's an amazing, what can I say? Language to learn.
Clicks in Southern Africa are actually so fascinating because I think it all emanate from the Sand people.
Sand
The-
people.
You know,
The short, like the
Bushmen.
pygmies.
Yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah, like
so-
the
yeah.
gods must be crazy.
Yes. So
Those
because-
people. Oh, I get the people you're
because
saying.
that's that click language comes from them.
Amazing.
And you see they have influenced our language, the Xhosas as well.
In Xhosa.
Mandela's language.
Oh, nice.
So I think the understanding is that the more clicky your language is, the more closer to original human language.
Oh, that's amazing. So there's a few tribes that do the clicks,
Yes.
not just the one tribe.
Would you
Okay.
say a statement like that in Xhosa?
Xhosa.
In Xhosa, utata ka qobula undi qobule ngeqondo emqolweni ngaqinda qaqonda ukuthi undigqibile,
Amazing.
something like that. But in Xhosa it's a bit difficult.
It's a bit
'cause it's not
different,
my
is
language,
it?
but,
I love it. Yeah. So just different dialects, but similar versions of it. Amazing. So Dr. Molapo, I know I met you. Was it back in March? April?
much here.
About March, we met at the Courageous Women Awards, in which I was very privileged to meet Dr. Molapo, and I was rubbing elbows with the. To me, it's like, yo, but he was amazing. The story you know, obviously when you went upstage and you told your story, that obviously moved a little something in me, and I wanted to sit down and know you more and see if maybe one day we can. You never know, do business together. So to see you in this couch. Funny enough, he came the next day with his beautiful children, and we were so privileged.
He came to
And
the.
We are
to
just
the
remember
restaurant.
them
Yeah.
taking their time, enjoying their time. There was no hurry. Had a meal or two and 10 million coffees. But he did give us very good reviews as far as the business of Afro Authentic. And
was
I
wonderful.
think there's just something about you that I always find fascinating. I even tell Cranston, don't I?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
100.
So
But
Thank
my
you so
question
much
is,
for
on
that.
that day, I wasn't present. Did you guys dance? Because we dance everywhere.
you do.
The kids danced.
The kids,
not put
it on the kids.
It's
Yeah, they basically.
They were
when
doing
meet up,
that
they dance.
Kilimanjaro.
The Kilimanjaro was
The
awesome.
Kilimanjaro dance,
Can I
yeah.
please just have them here one day? We do a TikTok together. And show auntie, kids. Show auntie how to do this, your moves. But in saying that, I remember you did let me know about the book. You have a 3-part series. Do you want to talk a bit more about the 3-part series of your book?
Yeah, I mean the book is called A New African, which is a interesting inspiration really. I remember there's a one prolific speaker from South Africa, Zimbabwe. You might know him, Joshua Maponga. In 2019, I'd gone to South Africa on a special occasion, and he's a friend of mine. So we had this meeting together.
How do you become friends with such a prolific man?
Well,
How do you just
I
meet
don't know. I
somebody
think
and-
isn't it that the better of the feather, you know?
Yeah, it's true.
Yes, sir.
They do
Anyway,
flock.
you know, we've been friends from a long time. I think I've known him for over 25 years or
Oh, that's a decent time.
and so anyway, we were having a conversation, and I was saying to him that we actually need a new way of thinking as Africa.
I like that.
And he said, look, Africa has always been, Africa has carried the whole world. We don't need a new Africa.
Oh, I like that.
The person that we need is a new African.
Say that again.
Is a new African.
A new African, not a new Africa.
We're not a new Africa.
I like that.
And we need a new way of thinking.
Yes, as
And
Africans.
I know, yeah, man, it really set me thinking, and I thought to myself, how can we think differently? What is it that we are doing wrong in our way of thinking, in our mindset? How do we move forward in such a way that as our generation we can make a mark and leave a good legacy for our children coming?
Yes.
And so that's where the book comes from. And it's a well-structured book.
Lovely.
It's in 3 parts because part 1 is about the history of where we come from.
Yes.
So I needed to really
Yeah, you have to
find
start from
a
the
summary,
beginning.
a
Yes.
summary of where we come from and narrate our story in our own words.
Yes.
And then this part 2, it's a simple summary of our present situation in Africa.
Yes.
What are the main issues?
Yes.
You know, in a positive and in a negative way. Where are we situated as a continent? What are
I
the
like
main
that.
issues?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last book is about then how do we move forward as a people?
Love that.
Yeah.
So you've got a beginning, you've got a middle, and now you are
Yeah.
concluding what is this all about?
Exactly.
What can we do further?
Exactly.
Yes.
Of course, it's not just my thoughts, but it's triggering a conversation,
Yes.
especially for our new generation. It's triggering a conversation of how we can start to forge a unified voice
Yes.
and a unified thinking
Yes.
in a way that we move
Forward as
together.
Africans.
Exactly. Not necessarily as, it is very interesting. There's very interesting concepts coming out of it.
Yes.
For instance, what is an African diaspora? When all Africans are displaced.
It's true.
Whether you are in Africa or outside Africa.
Yes, it's
If
true.
you are an African at this moment when we have this little power,
Yes.
we are all displaced. And
We
how
are.
do we begin to appreciate that as a people together, we have been displaced? And the other concept which is very interesting is, how do you define an African?
Well, let me chime in very
Yeah.
briefly. I've been very fortunate to interact with the book
Lovely.
quite intimately,
Right.
including the author as we have him on the couch.
Yes.
Of the many concepts that jumped out to me was African privilege.
Yes.
If you could talk
Nice.
a little bit about African privilege.
That's a very interesting topic. If you look closely at our way of thinking nowadays, people think that the privilege in the world now, people who are privileged, are mostly those who are not unfortunate, or those who are fortunate enough not to be born Africans. So we look at Europeans, for instance, and say, my goodness, how lucky they are. Even the Europeans themselves, they probably think, my goodness, I wonder what would have happened to me if I was born in Sudan or something.
Yeah, I'm sure they look at. Yeah.
So there's this sense that somewhat it's a disadvantage to be an African. And so in this book, I make a little story. I start from a little story in order to drive a point home of a young girl who was born in Pretoria, very beautiful African young girl called Khotatso. And Khotatso was born with a little mark on the face of on the side of her face. And this mark was in the shape of Africa.
Are you serious?
And kids used to laugh at her growing up, and then they mocked her. They called her Africa.
Oh dear!
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And then, it's as if it's a scorn to be called Africa.
Yeah.
And then she grew up to become this beautiful, amazing model, African model.
Wow.
Mercedes-Benz and so
Nice.
forth. She's a prolific personality. But, she says something amazing. She says, in the world where you are born to become anything,
Yes.
be yourself. And then she
Completely
goes
agree.
on about what does it mean to be yourself. And in this chapter, then I talk about the privilege of being born an African.
I love that.
And how many people are unfortunate that they have not been born in this amazing
Exactly. Thank you.
so it's an incredible chapter. I don't have time to go to all the details, but you realize that with the genes that we were born with, the resources that we were born with, it only takes a mindset to realize how privileged we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the 1 second, Linda, for the sake of the viewers and the listeners out there, African privilege is tackled in episode 2 of A New African podcast, which is a podcast based on the trilogy of books. You will find that on YouTube. And African privilege is well covered and explained. I watched that several times.
Okay, you must
I
explain
enjoyed that
what you're talking
conversation
about.
myself.
Are you talking about Dr. Molapo's podcast?
Yes.
Okay, say that so that the viewers can understand.
Oh, it's Dr. Molapo's podcast. It's called A New African with a K.
Me, people can be thinking, what is this one talking
And you
about?
African with a K.
Okay, so Dr. Molapo does have a podcast, correct?
Yeah, I do have a podcast. We have shot the first season of the podcast, and I think it's going to have several seasons. And
Amazing.
Each season has got about 10 episodes. And really, I think the next sessions we will be looking into deeper conversations.
What are you conversating about now on your podcast?
Really, it's prominent subject matters. For instance, things like, topical issues. The African war, for instance. If we were to stop the African war right now, which is a misnomer, by the way, there's nothing like an African war, but it's a war in Africa which was caused by other people,
Yes.
which robs us of everything else.
This one I completely understand.
And if we were to stop the war in Africa, what would be the
What would it?
benefits? The importance of stabilizing ourselves. How do we leverage and benefit from a stabilized continent?
And how would we utilize it?
Exactly.
Because you may have all the resources, but utilizing it is a different story.
Exactly. African borders, another topical subject. How do we start destroying these borders that have been artificially
Have been
erected?
created, yes.
Between
Yes.
it's a difficult one because we don't it's not just a question of erasing the actual physical borders.
Yes.
It's actually even the psychological
Oh,
borders.
it's deep rooted, if I can put it that way.
It's African economy. How do we start, sharing our goods, sharing our services, the free movement of our people. Even African animals are free to move around.
Imagine.
Why can't African people just be free to move around?
Good one. I like that.
So it's a very, I guess these things, they are all geared towards somewhat planting a seed towards the change of the mindset. Of an
That's
African
great.
person.
I think you're doing great as far as, showcasing your podcasts, and showcasing Africa as a whole,
Thank you
both
so much.
historically and, who we are as people and economically and so on. So you're putting Africa on the map in that regard, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's what Maponga was saying. We can't put Africa on the map. Africa has put all of us on the map.
I love it.
Africa has put the world on the map.
It's
and
true.
it's about us changing ourselves so that we respect Africa. I mean, the motherland has given us everything as a people.
Absolutely.
Humanity comes from Africa.
It is the manipulation that has been instilled upon us
Exactly.
that has made us who we are, where we are right now. So
Well,
we need to change the narrative.
this episode wasn't meant to be a long one.
No, I like the long one. In fact, I feel like you've got more to showcase. Me, I want to hear about how you grew up in those times of
Yes.
apartheid.
Yes.
What is apartheid all about?
Yes, yes.
Let us know. What is
Oh,
apartheid?
like now,
And how was
yes.
it growing up in apartheid days?
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting one. I look back now with awe because, I spent effectively 22 years of my life in the apartheid era. So I
That's a
became
long
a young
time.
man.
Growing up,
Effectively, I
yeah.
grew up in that whole era.
Wow.
And it was a short, apartheid was a very short period in South Africa.
From
which
what year to what year?
1948 to
48.
1994.
That's quite a
That's
period.
over 50 years.
That's quite a period.
It's quite a period, but it's short, if you look at historically.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think that South Africa has always been like that. But look, it was a concept which was, among many, it was actually imported from Australia as a philosophy.
As a model, yeah, they got the model from
From where?
Australia. Because there was
From this
segregation
country,
from here, yeah.
From Australia.
Oh, I never knew this.
Yeah, they were segregating between the settlers and the indigenous Aboriginals.
Yes.
Oh, is that right?
And then so what happened is the National Party in South Africa, in 1948, they decided, look, we want the policy of people's identity in terms of their race, we want to legislate it.
Yeah.
And so it comes from this concept of perhaps white supremacy. It's a bad term to use, but effectively it is a group of people thinking that they are better than other people. And so there was basically people put in levels. So there were four groups of people, four categories. If you belong to category 1, you were a human being.
Wow. Who
And
puts
then
people in
we
categories?
happen to belong to category 4.
Wow.
We were like subhuman.
Wow.
Barely making it as human
Oh, that's
beings.
so terrible.
And so it comes with territory. So you had to live outside the town. So they were called the townships.
Yes.
So we were grouped there.
Oh,
Soweto's history is rooted in the Johannesburg gold rush of the late 1800s. Tens of thousands came to find their fortune. Rich white prospectors built nice houses while poorer gold diggers, white and black, lived together in neighboring slums. But then, on top of economic segregation, came the racial kind. In 1904, blacks were relocated to the outskirts, out of sight of the white neighborhoods. This is how Soweto began. Thousands more were relocated there in 1923. That's when blacks were banned from living in parts of Johannesburg. When apartheid became regime police in 1948, they were driven out of more areas, including Sophiatown. Soweto's population exploded. By the 1950s, it was no longer just a township, but an urban sprawl. It was around this time that people started actually calling it Soweto. The word abbreviates Southwest Township, the longer form indicating its location relative to Joburg. Soweto became a hotbed for anti-apartheid activity. Its residents included key players such as Nelson Mandela, Chris Hani, and Walter Sisulu. In 1976, it became a symbol of the struggle. The regime forced black schools to use Afrikaans, the language of the oppressors. When children and others protested peacefully, police responded with deadly violence. Among the victims was 12-year-old Hector Peterson. The image of his body being carried by another resident made front pages globally.
Which
People
you
had
didn't
to
have
commute.
access to.
So how are
Yeah.
you surviving?
Exactly.
Wow.
So, just minimum wages.
It's ridiculous.
And our parents had to travel between the outskirts towns to the main, sources of economy or hubs of economy. A very bad system. So it means that our education was inferior. It means that our
Access to finance was
Yeah.
non-existent.
exactly. So everything was just everything was set against you, and so things like university access.
Wow.
You're
And yet you're a scholar. Look at you now.
you're a black
So-
person. What do you know about education?
Yeah.
And
You don't have the
academics?
brains for it.
No. So that is the era in which we grew up.
That's tough.
And so it was very interesting because around that same time, I think 1948, Mandela must have been about, he was a 30-year-old young man.
Wow, still very
so-
young.
So it was legislated at a time when people like Nelson Mandela were young, militant, budding leaders.
Yeah.
And so they fought against this legislation. And so about 12 years later or so, he was then incarcerated. And he was to spend the whole of his life in prison for this, resistance against the legislation. And so we thought, when we grew up, Mandela was banned. And so they used to, we didn't even know how Mandela looked because there was, this
Wow.
blank around his eyes. You didn't know how he looked. It was illegal to talk about him,
Whoa.
to expose his image.
That's terrible.
That type of a thing. And so we were effectively muzzled.
Yes.
Could not talk about these issues. And then, come
Sorry, the cold.
come late 80s, beginning of the 90s, then Nelson Mandela was released. Are you okay?
Yeah, when the cold hits my chest, that's what happens.
So
But thank you.
so then the world really got together to fight this regime in South Africa, and the pressure mounted against them, which ended up in 1990, Nelson Mandela being released from prison. And that
was glorious.
That was an epic time.
That was an epic time for all of Africa. You have no idea how much we all rooted for him, for his release, even within our own countries in Africa. So, Cranston, you want to help me with some words?
Yes, I do.
I feel like what we normally introduce, how we normally introduce the show, is we obviously let our guests, we want to know how you got here. Again, as Cranston says, not geographically, but how you made it from
From Kutwa,
such
no.
trial times. Growing up, 22 years of the apartheid was not easy. To actually making it. You're a doctor. You are a podcaster now. And this is very today's world. Don't get me wrong, not just anybody can do this. You are a historian, if I can put it that way. You're an author. The odds were against you as a young boy maybe growing up, correct? How did you get to where you are?
Well, it's very interesting, really. I guess, these dots, you can only begin to join them in retrospect. And I think somewhat we owe it to God, to a society, to
Amen.
benevolent universe. For, there's a saying that says, these things happen for us,
Yes, to us.
to us.
Yes.
And I think without realizing, I guess we grew up in that era for a particular reason. And so, interesting enough, around the time that Nelson Mandela was released, that is the time when I was finishing high school. And so I somewhat in my spirit, I just knew that I grew up, and although apartheid was so limiting in so many ways, but I just knew that I wanted to do something,
Greater and bigger.
Amazing with my life.
Amazing.
And
That's
so,
good.
and so I worked hard, through high school and so forth. And I was not even sure, Cranston. I was not sure where was that leading me to.
Right.
But I just wanted to make sure that I excel in school.
Yes.
And so by the time I finished high school,
Yes.
it was very interesting because our high school was actually banned that year.
Your particular high school?
Yeah.
Out of all the other high schools?
Well, the country was in chaos. At the time I finished high school, South Africa was at the brink of a civil war.
Wow, yeah.
Because I finished high school 1991,
Yep.
and apartheid finished 1994.
Yeah.
So there was still about 2-3 years
Yeah.
where there was a level of uncertainty.
Yes.
So between when Mandela came out of prison to when apartheid ended, there was this big element of uncertainty in the country. And so, but at that time, I had worked so hard that I made sure that I get top marks.
I like
in
that.
maths, in science. But I didn't know what that
Or
meant.
where it was going to take you
Exactly.
even. Yes.
But when opportunities came, I could apply for bursaries, universities, and there's nobody who could decline.
Yes, exactly.
So I
Because
got
your marks were
access-
tops.
Exactly.
Amazing.
So I got access to. I just needed to make a decision. Where do I want to go? So I said I want to go to UCT Medical School. They accepted me.
So you've always wanted to be a doctor?
Well, it's a decision that I made when I was in about year 10.
Nice.
So maybe 2 years before I finished high school.
Nice.
Yeah, so that, it was very interesting because then I could apply to to university. I got access. And I told them when I got access to university that, hey, thank you for accepting me, but I don't have money to
You're
study.
funny. Can't pay your tuition fees.
And then they said, no, don't worry. Just come and then we'll see
Oh, that's great.
how it goes.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so when I arrived to the university, then encouraged me to apply for scholarships and so forth. And by March or April, I got this scholarship from Boehringer Ingelheim, which is a pharmaceutical company from Germany.
Nice.
And they sponsored me from year one at university to until I finished. medical school.
Amazing.
So it is, it was just amazing because then it sort of set my path. From
Amazing.
then onwards. So when I finished, I worked in South Africa briefly for about 2-3 years.
As a doctor?
As
As
doctor.
a qualified doctor?
Yes. And then I moved to UK. So I worked in UK for about 12 years.
Oh, wow. How did you find that opportunity to move to UK?
Well, I just, I remember I was working in this hospital, and I think I went to a course somewhere, and there was this opportunity that if people wanted to, you could
jump in.
Where they were looking for people
To sponsor?
to work in UK. It was just a job, people recruiting. And I went, I thought I was going to work for about 3 years and come back. But when I got there, I realized, hey, man, there's so many opportunities to
Yes.
study further. So I ended up staying about 12 years and I specialized over there.
You seem to have a deeper story, but fine, because we're running out of time. We'd love to get you back for maybe like a part 2 or something.
Sure.
What do you think?
Yeah,
We'll give you adequate time.
Give
I
you
do
enough
apologize
time.
for, having to keep you here all night and so on and so forth, but I'm sure you enjoyed a nice meal at the restaurant while you waited.
No, it's been a beautiful night, fantastic night. Thanks, Cranston.
You're most welcome.
Thanks, Linda.
Welcome.
I'll look forward to further conversation. Obviously, when we have time to talk further.
Yeah.
About, my story. I really appreciate it, and I regard it a privilege to just talk my story. Yeah.
I believe the privilege is also ours to have Dr. Molapo right here on this couch. Hey, amazing. But Dr. Molapo does the best TikToks with his kids. Are they TikToks or what are they?
Well, Instagram
Videos. Seriously, you need to go check out his page. We will put all the credentials at the bottom of the screen, correct?
Yes, we will.
In case anyone wants to go check out Dr. Molapo and, his pages, whether it be official or just, your little moves.
Then he does. I personally, I must say it, I put it on record. I absolutely hate what he does on Sundays. So this dude.
Oh dear, what does he do on Sundays?
Goes and does this jogging business. So he runs around for a very long
love
time.
it.
And then he posts this long map, 25 kilometers of running.
Good.
I can't even walk 3Ks
That's
without
the
losing
thing.
my life.
Well, maybe if you start, you can get to that point of
Look,
running.
okay, Molapo, we appreciate your fit, but don't post everything now.
Post them, I like them.
I'll limit that.
No, post them. He has a
But
lifestyle.
you know what?
You don't have a lifestyle. What's your lifestyle?
My lifestyle is not to watch his posts.
This
Because every weekend I have to look at it.
I love
this running
it.
thing. I don't like. The running thing. Sometimes it gets to you because so much effort. But what I really liked this year was seeing myself run with my kids
In the HBF.
Oh, I saw that.
That was very special.
That was very special. You could see.
My son almost ran the same time as me. It's just I was impressed. He ran a half marathon in less than an hour, so which was not a half marathon, 12K.
Wow.
In less than an hour, which is very nice.
I love the bond between you and your children, I must say.
Thank you.
Are you looking after them very well, I must say, and I love how they look up to you. But you're doing a good job. I did also see the HBF fun run. There was a special bond between you.
Yeah.
You did that together. I don't know. Y'all have got a bond anyway, but there was something about the HBF. There was a great, as you know, it's a great initiative, and it was good that you did, come together as family to do so. But now I do rather enjoy your Instagrams and so on. But get me in on one of them, kids, okay? Come teach auntie how to do them, seriously.
They do these dances. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have to draw the show to a close. We will invite you back to come
we need to bring Dr. Molapo back.
A very longer episode, but you can ask all your questions.
Yeah.
Because I have a whole bunch as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
So do stay tuned to the channel. And if you want to know a bit more about what he's doing regarding the podcast, it's called A New Afrikan, AFRIKN, African with a K. Search that on all the socials and on YouTube. Specifically episode 2, because we were talking about, or they were talking about, African privilege. It's an interesting concept. But in a nutshell, as we had said earlier, you are very privileged if you were born in Africa, and people downplay that.
Oh, very. Motherland.
Thanks for listening.
Africa with a K. Is that intentional? Or is that history?
It's a big part of the book.
Yeah, the whole thing is a new African with a K means that you're not like a new African.
You're the old one. Is it not true Africa was spelled with a K historically?